I want to invite our main speaker for today. The main speaker for today, who is none other than Baroness Sandip Verma. She has so many accolades. She is one of us, but she has gone through the struggle. She has made the difference. She has become an example, an icon for people to follow, so as to make the difference in life of not just the business world, but also the socio-political world. She's got more than 100 accolades, including the most prestigious Bharat Samman Award from the President of India in 2011. She is chair of the European Development Committee and so many other committees. I have got a list, including the Ellis Island Honor Award from USA in 2014, Global Chairman of the Worldwide Generations, Chairman of Nexus Green Limited, Chairman of DCS Limited, Independent Director of the Renewable Energy Association, Advisor to St. John's Cass Foundation, Advisor of the Amity University, and obviously she is patron of many, many prestigious organizations. The list goes on and on. Can we give a big hand to invite Hon'ble Baroness Sandip Verma, the Chairman of the European External Affairs Committee.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak here today. The accolade that has just been given was huge, as is this microphone. I'm going to talk about UK as a hub for global business. I want to talk about it in the context and the backdrop of the referendum result that we had last June, and the opportunities and the challenges that are posed to the UK, but focus really on our relationship with the world and how we are going to turn our new relationship with Europe into something much more positive than you see in the press every day. I was a Remainer. However, we have a democratic process in this country, and 52% of the population of the UK voted to come out of Europe, and so therefore we will be coming out. And as chairman of the European External Affairs Committee, one of the areas that I look at closely is how will that impact on trade and services. And we've taken evidence from many, many companies that operate in the UK, many companies that are Indian companies that are operating in the UK, many companies that are from other parts of the world operating in the UK. We've also taken a lot of evidence from businesses, academics and politicians from across the world. And what it has allowed us to do is to see how we, as a country, in this new order of things to come when we leave Europe, how will UK itself take on the new opportunities. And I'll focus on India today because India, of course, is a key partner. It's one of the largest growing economies in the world. It will be seen in another decade or so as the third or fourth largest economy on the planet. And so it is therefore in our interests as UK to make sure that we look at and rise up to the great opportunities that exist, not more because we share a common language of English. Coming to the UK and operating in the UK is easy to do. It takes usually around 13 days to set up a company in the UK against the backdrop of 32 to 33 days in Europe. We have some of our largest companies from India operating in the UK. 800 companies are already here They employ over 110,000 people. And the supply chain that also benefits from those large companies has a ripple down effect. So the UK-India relationship is crucial for us to be able to develop and find the opportunities going forward. But that doesn't stop us from also looking at the challenges. And some of those challenges that have been taken up with the UK government are on how will the skills gaps be met? How will the freedom of movement of people be met? What will happen with the customs union if we're not a member of it? Will that increase costs to do trade? All of those are questions that need to be answered, and I know that the Prime Minister has very much at the forefront of her mind that when we do exit, that it is as clean and as easy for businesses to be able to accommodate. Now, as chairman of my committee, we have done a number of reports, and if you haven't read them, please do. They're riveting reading. They are short, they are snappy, but what they demonstrate is that the UK, a recommendation from the committee is, needs a transitional period. It needs time for us to be able to get businesses business ready in a climate where there are not as least or little barriers as possible for businesses to come or to operate in. Now, as we took evidence, one of the interesting parts of the evidence sessions was actually most companies, having come to the conclusion that we are leaving, want to know how to prepare themselves for the exit. And I think what we need to do, all of us that are represented here, is to make sure that there is an emphasis on the getting ready for doing business outside of Europe. And I think that is something that businesses have expressed a great fear in. And so businesses are asking, how do we get ourselves business ready for life outside of Brexit? Now, I have spent many, many years taking delegations across the world, UK delegations, UK businesses across the world. I was a Minister for Energy and Climate Change, and one of my jobs was to take high-value opportunities to countries like Bulgaria, Romania, the new Central Eastern Bloc countries that had come out and were independent and looking on how they could actually grow their economies. So I have huge experience in this area of looking at where there will be difficulties, but also being optimistic about the great opportunities. One thing I have always argued for, and this was even before the referendum, was that India, as a great opportunity place for UK businesses, really did need to embrace the small to medium-sized enterprises much better. We in the UK needed to prepare the groundwork for SMEs much better. And I think that is a conversation that needs to evolve even more so now, given that 96–90% of the companies in the UK tend to be SMEs. And what we don't want to do is to see SMEs not actually getting the fruit of being able to operate in economies like India, China, Japan. I mean, the Prime Minister had a very fruitful meeting with in Japan recently, and you know, the Japanese in the UK invest around, they spend around 40 billion every year through their businesses here, generate 40 billion for the GDP in their businesses here. They, you know, employ around 140,000 people in the UK. So these are large numbers. So it is right that we ask the serious questions, but it is also right that we work to make sure that we provide the environment for businesses to be able to operate smoothly in. And one of the key things most businesses say they like operating in the UK is that it has good security, fiscal measures are very comfortable for businesses here, and that employment law employment legislation actually supports the way that they want to see their businesses grow. So I think for people looking at the UK as a hub for global business, this is actually the time for us to step up and to be able to demonstrate that this is absolutely the country that people need to come to. London will still remain the financial centre of the world, I believe, because of all the reasons I've just laid out, that there are safety nets in place for businesses. We're also working very hard, and I know that when David Cameron was Prime Minister and George Osborne was Chancellor, that we wanted to lessen the divide from the north of the UK to the south, because what would happen was, of course, that the south would be the growth area and the north would miss out. Now, for those of you who come from India, my plea is, if you haven't been to the north, go and see the opportunities there, because we have brilliant universities in the north. We have brilliant manufacturing bases still today in the north. We have brilliant agricultural plants and farms, and we have fantastic products in the north. The Midlands has always been the central engine for this country on producing things, and there are opportunities that are out there for every single type of business that you would want to operate in, and at the backdrop of a very safe place to operate. So for me, I'm hoping that we continue to lessen the divide between the north and the south. The people of the north are fantastic if you haven't met them. They are very accommodating and very welcoming. And what we want to be able to do is to continue in our position in the world as a country that is respected for the rule of law. It is respected for people's rights, and it is a country that by and large has thrived on investment from across the world. Now, I know that Brexit raised some uncomfortable conversations around immigration. And I think we should really lay the blame firmly at the feet of politicians for failing continually, political colours, all political colours, of the failure to address something that really does concern the public. Now, that isn't just for the UK, it's across the world. Across the world, we have seen a transient population on a scale that has not been known for a very, very long time. And we need to take responsibility as politicians, and I stand here as one, to say we need that honest debate. Now, people will say, oh no, it's not about immigration. Brexit was nothing about immigration. It was about sovereignty. It was about taking our rules back. It was about lots of things. But I'm afraid, I think the bulk of the argument still, in my mind, was that we failed to address certain issues, and one of those issues was immigration. Having said that, every single Prime Minister that I have known for many, many years has always looked towards India as a key partner. And David Cameron made his first trade mission as a visit to India, Theresa May as hers, and Philip Hammond, when he was there as Chancellor, his first visit was to India. So there is a real important focus on our relationship with the oldest democracy and the largest democracy on the planet. Now, I think going forward, whilst we can see that there are going to be some areas of difficulty, and it's often raised with me, you know, there is the question of students and visas, and of course there will be, as we tighten rules up, on people being able to access the skills sector visas that they need to be able to work here, the permits that they need to work here. Well, these are debates that we need to be having. Those debates need to be discussed now, openly, and without fear. And I think the problem has been, for far too long, we navel-gaze and talk to ourselves, but we're not willing to take that conversation out there. And I do plead with visitors and with the people that operate here, let's have that honest discussion before these talks are over, because it will be to our benefit to have them and to our detriment not to have them. I've taken delegations to India, and I know that in the beginning it was quite difficult. My first delegation I took was in 2002, and it was to Gujarat when the chief minister then was the current Prime Minister Modi. And I must tell you, in 2002, that state was way beyond many states that were in India at the time. And of course, many states are now trying to do the catch-up of trying to be Gujarat. Now, we as businesses and people from the business community can do a lot to make sure that we take the confidence to invest in India, as well as Indian companies investing here. So I would hope that we have a relationship of equals, where people feel confident enough to be able to say, as a business, I would like to operate in India. As a business, I'd like to come and partner up with a business in the UK. It's to our benefits, all of our benefits, that we do that. And also, let's dispel the myth that the only conversation we have around immigration tends to be one of negativeness. I want us all to take out the bogeyman from immigration. Immigration has been good for this country, it has been good for every country. If you look at the countries that have thrived, they have thrived because immigration populations have added value to those countries. And we've got to dispel the myths that immigration puts a burden on countries, when in the UK we make up, and I'm looking to Subhash, about 14% of the population here. But we actually produce a GDP return of well over that number. And so we should be actually speaking up about the contribution that is being made by the immigrants to any country. So whether it's here, whether it's in the USA, where there is another topical debate going on about immigration, I think what we've got to do is to stop navel-gazing at the lack of progress and look at the progress that has been made. Now, looking at this conference today, and I want to congratulate the organisers, because the organisers have been determined to ensure that the Indian-European business relationships are built on and strengthened. And you need to be congratulated for that, because especially with the backdrop of uncertainty, with the Brexit discussions, it is so important to see you coming here and engaging at a level where you're trying to reach out and saying that we want to come to the UK to do business, we want you to come to India to do business. That is such a strong message that needs to be going out there. And when I do take delegations, and we're taking one to India in November, we are taking a trade delegation to India in November, we're doing it on the basis that we want British companies to understand that those historical relationships that were formulated many, many years ago are still strong, and that that relationship can only be strengthened, but in a different way. And that those relationships today are about equal access to markets. And we need to make the environment as accessible to everyone as possible. Now, I'm going to finish on a note of telling you a little bit about myself and why I'm so passionate about doing business, not just in this country, but across the globe, but particularly in India. And I am so pleased that I'm joined here by the President of the Institute of Directors India, General Ahluwalia, and the CEO, Manoj, who I did see here. Oh, he's just gone out to take his phone call, which is typical. Yeah. And I've worked with the Institute of Directors India for well over a decade. We have worked together to get leadership programs into place across the globe. And I can say that under the leadership of the General, he treats us all as army people. we have managed to see the membership grow, I think, fourfold, fivefold, General? And to be quite frank, it is because, sevenfold, it is because people across the globe now see that actually doing business in different countries, you need the same tenets of accountability, of transparency, of being able to deliver the bottom line, but also look at the ethical processes within doing business, wherever you are in the world. So we were in Dubai in April, and what we found was the level of interest from the Gulf countries to now accommodate working practices of leadership coming from the Institute of Directors India just shows you how we're shrinking as a globe. We're becoming smaller and much more interactive with each other, and so it matters. What happens in the UK matters to what happens in India or in China or in Japan. So it is about us all looking at ourselves as global entrepreneurs. I mean, I started business with my husband, I was 19 years old, but I came from a business background, so I know what it takes to do the grafting and the hard work. But today, it's not about grafting and hard work. Today, it's about smart work. It's about clever operating. It's about using technology at your fingertips. But most importantly, it's about relationships. Now, relationships cannot be built through the mobile phone, through Skype or anything else. Relationships are still built on face-to-face interaction. And that is why it is so important that people that are organising this forum today, for us, this conference today for us, it is so important that we get that face-to-face interaction. Because if you really want to do business and you want to do it well, the one thing that you will need to do is still eyeball the person in front of you. And I'm now operating in Africa. We have to operate across the globe because, to be quite frank, we are all independent on each other. You know, we are looking to each other for resources, skills. I mean, IT skills from India prop up the UK. The pharmaceutical companies from India are getting bigger and bigger in the UK. Engineering, lots of services now that were not before as prevalent are now becoming much larger influence makers in the UK. And therefore, we need to start thinking, how do we adapt, how do we accommodate, and how do we do our business smart? Because if we don't do it smartly, guess what? The next person will, and you'll be out of business. So I would leave it on a positive note for you all. Ladies and gentlemen, the UK is open for business. Please tell everyone you know that this is a country where business is done with ease, where the stories you see in the headlines are not true. This is a country where people like my grandfather, who came in 1938, managed to do business and then generate enough income, as he used to say to us, generating enough income to support his family and many, many others. So I think what we need to do is to be optimistic and confident about ourselves and be optimistic and confident about what the future holds. It's easy to be pessimistic. It's easy to talk down your country. I want to talk up my country, Britain. I also want to talk up my country of origin, India. For all the faults of both of those countries, do you know, they are still the greatest places on the planet. And I would not want us to be anywhere else but those two places. I know that going to India for me is always a return home. I go maybe 3-4 times a year. My husband goes maybe 10-12 times a year. There's a question to be asked there on what he does 10-12 times a year. But what I do know is this, that it is a great future for us, but we have to make it. Thank you very much.
Baroness Verma as a chairman of the International Business Federation, I, Rajiv Gupta, confirm that we would be with you in your journey and in all your efforts that you do, and I think all those who are present here would vouch to be with you. And we want you to be with us, promoting actively the same mission, the same purpose, and the same journey we are going to do together. I think all of you would agree it was extremely inspiring, motivating, and thought-provoking talk. And I think I was sitting there and I was thinking, you know, there was talk about the light bulbs. Here is the light bulb. Lot of things, and it was great to hear your story. Great to hear your story. The crux is in the story, the inspiration is in the story. So there are a few questions if you are okay.
Harish.
Hi, Harish Ugani. I always say in my talks that winners never quit and quitters never win. Quite cliche. But how do you make that impossible into I am possible, your journey? How do you take the T out of can't and become the can woman? So what is your mantra? What is your winning ingredient of success? Besides your lovely rock solid husband and your dearest and nearest family, what other things are your mantras for success, and how do you do it so selflessly in the joy of others?
Well, I think really, Parish, thank you for the question, but I think you've really answered it yourself. Because I think the way to, I always take the T out of can't. You know, one of the things that I've learned in life is that I'd rather do it myself rather than wait for somebody else to do it. And if you don't depend on others to do things for you, there are less disappointments. So any mistakes you make are your own, and you take ownership of them. And to be quite frank, one thing my son said to me, and he went to New York for 5 years, and when he came back, he said, you know what, Mum, the one thing I've learned is failure is not bad. And I think the lack of trying is bad. The lack of trying is the problem. Whereas trying and failing, for me, is, okay, a learning. But I have never, ever thought that I couldn't do something. Society told me I couldn't. My parents told me I couldn't. But myself, and you're right, I have a rock-solid man behind me who's always told me to do it. Because even if I make a mistake, it's mine, and I take ownership of it, and I don't make it again. And I think far too many people are so frightened of trying that they give up, and then they look at themselves as failed. And one thing I would say, and I heard it earlier on from Verinder, and Verinder and I are different political colours, but what we do is we support each other on common things. And I think the communities that we come from don't always do that well. I think the crab mentality is what brings us down, and I think what we've got to learn to do is to say, if somebody's got a brilliant idea, it might not be mine, either I use it or I allow others to be supported for it. What I don't do is actually say that because it was his idea that I need to pull that person down. And I think we've got a lesson to learn there, and I think the Jewish community are really good at this. I mean, I must say, the one thing I've learned from the Jewish community is the ability for them to come together and be really supportive. They're a tiny community, but they come together and they are incredibly supportive, not only of their own community though, but they are incredibly supportive of other communities as well. And I think that's a credit to them as a community which we should learn from.
That was extremely powerful and very, very useful. And that reminds me that a lot of people who couldn't come today, and we have some empty seats, is because today is Jewish New Year. And that is one of the other things to learn, and we are learning in the journey. The other thing you said to us is that, you know, these are the stumbling blocks in life. And again, I was disheartened many, many times thinking all this effort is going, why is happening, why people are not fired up, why they are not inspired. And you told me a very, very supportive statement today is that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. You start your journey, you're on your mission, even if you don't succeed in first time, that is still great.
Keep going.
So,
can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Baroness Verma, my name is Madhava. You have mentioned that in the month of November you are taking a business delegation to India. Normally what happens with the business delegations, and when they go from UK, what exactly is the expectation, how successful our business delegations have been?
So, I don't want to talk about other people's delegations, I just talk about mine. First of all, I don't take big delegations. I take very small, concentrated, and I do them sector specific. As a Minister for Energy and Climate Change, I'm proud that the largest MOU sign-off on Prime Minister Modi's first visit to the UK was a business that I took. And it was a $2 billion MOU, which is now, I've been told, changed to $7 billion.
wow.
So it can be done, but you have to be quite clever at how you target. And I must say, the chief ministers and the politicians that I've worked with in India have been extremely helpful. And they want their states to be like Gujarat. So they want to see the investment come. And that's what I do. I focus on a sector. And we allow the people who come with us to engage directly with the people that they need to engage with. So like the ministers, like the politicians, like businesses that are like them. So I think we've got to look at trade missions in a way of relationship building. They went several times after the first delegation, and that is the important piece. It's not about, I'll rock up, do a meeting, and everything's done. It takes time. It takes time everywhere in the world. You know, trying to do business is not about just a phone call.
Thank you.
Very nice. IBF is a new organization, as you know. So suggest a few ways so we can take it further and build up a strong link between India and the UK.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you on doing this. The more organisations there are engaging with each other, the better. But we're very lucky in the UK. We've got some extremely good organisations that I would hope the next time you do an event that you would partner up with. You know, the Chamber, the Association, London Association of Business. We've got lots of wonderful business associations here. In the north, we've got good business. Please link up, but also link up with the great established organisations you have in India. Because, to be quite frank, it isn't about losing members, it's about sharing knowledge. And a confident organisation is one that isn't frightened of opening its doors for other organisations to come and have a look at what they're doing.
On that note, I would want to welcome and congratulate Lieutenant General Ahluwalia to the International Business Federation Global Business Conference, and I'm reasonably sure that working together would just make a big impact. And I hope you would agree that working together works, and together we'll make it happen. Also, we have Abhay Agarwal. He is the General Secretary of the Chamber of Commerce and Industries, which is specifically designed for people of Indian origin, and he has made this journey specifically just for this conference to partner up and launch a UK branch of the PIOCCI. So I would appreciate if you say a couple of words on how you feel about, and then take it from there. General Ahluwalia, you want to say, is the mic going around? Yeah.
You'll do it tomorrow.
Tomorrow. He's here tomorrow morning. Abhay, you can do it tomorrow morning.
Yeah, tomorrow morning we'll say yes.
tomorrow morning probably is better. So I think that will be fantastic. So I think we have come to.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.